I'm somebody who feels strongly about the school hater. These are my favorite students. If you hate school, I'm your person.
Welcome to the Hack Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Barnes, providing right now solutions to some of your biggest teaching and learning problems. Now, let's hack learning. And today on the Hack Learning Podcast, we're joined by Dawn Casey-Rowe, author of Don't Sniff the Glue, A Teacher's Misadventures in Education Reform. And reform and standardization are topics that Dawn is passionate about, among other things. And we'll talk about some of those topics today. But we're going to attempt, if we can, to hack education reform and standardization and see if we can't come up with some ways to maybe de-standardize the classroom. And Dawn will share some of her own experiences. And of course, we will always leave you with some what you can do tomorrow strategies. Dawn Casey-Rowe, thank you for joining us on the Hack Learning Podcast. Tell us what's going on with you these days.
Well, it's summer, amen. So I'm doing a little bit of relaxing and doing a whole lot of writing and catching up on all the preparations that I don't get to do during the school year. Some gardening, some sustainability and homesteading kind of stuff. So all that non-school stuff and side projects that I try to balance during the school year.
Well, that's outstanding. We always need time for those side projects and some downtime. Educators need downtime. I think the summer is always awesome for sort of recharging the batteries. Now, we'll talk a little bit about education reform and standardization and anything that you think is relevant from your book, Don't Sniff the Glue. But you said you are now doing a little bit of writing. Is there anything you can tell us about what you're writing now?
Right now, I'm writing a financial literacy book. The working title of this is Don't Go for Broke, How to Thrive on Teacher Pay. Teachers have never been known for making $1 million. And as somebody who has really suffered a couple of financial setbacks based on my business and just the economy changing and transforming in ways that will affect teachers and students, I started thinking, you know what, my incredibly cheap lifestyle is something that, teachers, it resonates with teachers. But I started the recipes, the frugal recipes and clean eating recipes that I feel passionate about ended up going a little bit crazy into broke teacher tips. And not any of them are 100% serious. I teach people how to go out into the community and steal pens. Because we don't have pens for our classroom. I really don't mean you should clip the post office pen, but it's to start that dialogue that we really need to talk about, supplying classrooms correctly and giving our students the things they need to be successful.
Well, hey, I'll tell you, Dawn, I think that pilfering the post office pen is a very hacky solution to the pen problem. And I may use that because I can tell you here in my home office, I never have a pen. And not that I want to throw anyone under the bus, children of mine, but those pens tend to walk away. Financial literacy, man, that's a great topic for educators and really for anyone, right? So that's exciting. Maybe we may have to revisit this topic later and do another episode because that sounds like some powerful content. But in the meantime, before that episode comes around later, hopefully, let's talk a little bit. Let's go back a little bit to your first book, Don't Sniff the Glue. Great title. And you talk about education reform. You're very passionate about putting students in the center and trying to sort of work your way around the hurdles that teachers are faced with, this sort of bureaucratic world that we live in. And of course, that is typically centered around standardization and the policymakers' never-ending quest to standardize education. Tell us a little bit about Don't Sniff the Glue, about your journey, and about your undying desire to sort of de-standardize education.
Well, I think Don't Sniff the Glue, it originated as a promise from a friend of mine. He said, you need to write for real. And I didn't know what I'd want to write about. And that just poured out of my soul. It was the thing that I was reflecting about that at the time. Education was something, I'm a second career educator. I come from corporate America. And so I became a teacher as a second career person because, I wanted to save the world. And this is what we do. And if you've been teaching longer than me, you might be chuckling right now and saying, good try, Casey. Nice try. But even back then, it was a good place to be. I knew that my pay would be cut in half. I knew that there would be, the schedule during the school year and all these things, and that I wouldn't get to choose my classes. And as happens with new teachers, you get the worst schedule. You just get hazed. And so I knew that would happen. But as somebody who was not, 23 out of college, I had a little bit more under my belt to deal with. I'd been used to dealing with a ton of money, with corporate bureaucracy, with standard operating procedures. So I had some background, but still education took me off guard. In the beginning of my career, they throw you in a classroom and have at it. They wanted kids to learn. Everybody wants kids to learn, but we recognized that it happened in different ways. And I'm somebody who feels strongly about the school hater. These are my favorite students. If you hate school, I'm your person, because I feel like I loved school and I want to prove that it doesn't have to be a time of suffering for you. So for me, I would be teaching the same 6 classes straight in a row, like replays of Shakespearean theater. And but in front of you is a different audience every 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I would be able to read that audience and connect their passions to other things using my subject area as the vehicle to do that. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we've always had standards, but 5 or 6 years ago, the standardization movement hit hard and it meant something. It was high stakes for students, high stakes for teachers. And
Right.
and instead of saying, well, yeah, you can customize your classroom experience for period 3, who wants to learn more about China than Japan, I'm social studies, it became, no, we all have to learn this skill and it all has to be the same so that this kid doesn't have a different experience from that kid. On the surface, it sounds reasonable, but the world is a different place. I
Right.
mean, I own a business, but even when I was doing those things, I'd outsource my bookkeeping or I'd outsource the things that were not my gifts. And I would capitalize on my, interpersonal skills or creativity or, the things that I could add to my business to make it run better.
So you're saying that your business isn't standardized, that our life isn't necessarily standardized, that you have to do things your own way. Maybe in the classroom, you talked early on about the kids who hated school. Are you combining your classroom skill and now your business skill of de-standardizing to sort of make things better?
Absolutely, because my business is not standardized. Like we started as an old school martial arts instruction, and so you'd come in, you'd learn martial arts, whichever one you chose. And then we ended up getting in on the ground floor of ilovekickboxing.com. So that used to be an SEO company, a marketing company. They would get the leads and then you would teach. Now, as they expanded into a brick and mortar national organization, you can't go into one business and have a negative experience and go into the one down the street and have a positive experience. So there has to be some level of customer expectations. But what we do within that framework, and it's exactly the same skill set you need to run a successful classroom, you need to be able to read that customer and give them 100% of your best experience. So when my student leaves my classroom, they need to go home and say, wow, I did this today and I want to do more of that. And in order to do that, I need to say, well, what do you feel strongly about and how are you planning to use this in your life? Now, you might say, well, listen, Casey, you got to be teaching social studies. And I will do that, but I would submit to you that I can take the customer experience, my students' experience, and what they expect from me, and I can apply social studies and integrate their passion into any class I teach. And I've had kids throw curveballs at me and say, well, I want to learn about oceanography. Great. You need to learn about the history, maritime law, the history of, and I'll be able to throw 5 or 6 case studies that apply my field and their passions and even fields they don't want. But when I give them the math that they need or the science that they need or the other subjects that they never thought they'd love, within the framework of their own passions, they do it. They light up. And so that's what true learning is, because today we don't need to learn facts and trivia. That's, why the good Lord invented Google. But today we need to learn how to really dig deep and apply that to something that will help us with one of the 7 careers our students are expected to have. That's big.
That is big. And you're talking about integrating real life. We need to think about ways that we can integrate real world skills and concepts into our classroom. I wonder, though, in this standardized world, can we really do that? And the things you're talking about, Dawn, with applying your own business skill set and customer relations, talking about how you deal with customers individually And it's not a standard. We're not standardizing our customers. And then you can carry that into the classroom. Now, in the hack learning model, we identify problems and we hack them and we give right now solutions, but we also deal with pushback. So let me push back on you a little bit. So let's say that everything you're saying about working with kids and crossing over, finding the math hater and giving them some sort of a real application and digging into their passion. Man, I love that. But I've got 125 to 30 students. How can I do these things? How can I de-standardize my class and do all the cool things you're talking about in a large classroom?
All right, that's an excellent question, and because I get this one all the time. I get two things. One, how are you going to provide excellent learning if you're not teaching them all up to the same standard, or you're not teaching all the same exact skills or same exact material? And two, well, I don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that, hashtag. Yes, you do. And the way you do that is by creating those interpersonal relationships. I feel like the entire core of my success is being relevant, and I can be relevant to students only when I build a relationship with them first. I will go into school and I'll find out, where are my customers? Well, right now my customers are on Instagram, Snapchat, they're on social media. So I can't, hand them a ditto. I even found some old dittos of mine that I had from years ago. I'm like, these are ugly, man. I'd never click on this. So I have to recognize in today's environment, I have to create content that they want to consume. Now, within that, I know that this kid likes, math. This kid wants to have a skate shop. This kid wants this. So because I have that through those authentic conversations, either on the side in the morning during my class, I build in time for that. And then I say, hey, I was reading this book. I thought of you, and I'll hand them that book. So not 100% of my customization is done within that lesson for the day. I might have that lesson for the day, and that will break down the material into 2 or 3 different groups or 2 or 3 different things, or I might just say, well, here's what you can do with this. Here's how I would apply this if I loved oceanography or if I loved, business. So I will put those little side notes in as I teach. Another way I've done that is by incorporating Genius Hour. They built out what they wanted to, and I said, congratulations, go do it for real. And so they had their own groups, their own interests, and their own subgroups, yet the objective was the same. And so by taking the same objective and asking a student to access it in their way, either by varying the material, giving student choice in technology, or the way they want to present that, it goes a long way in allowing them to use their talent.
Yeah, so and you're talking about taking the same outcome. I think that's what people, when they think of standardization, think is, okay, well, we're trying to get kids to learn the same thing, and that's okay, right? We're taking the same outcome and saying this is where we want to get, but it sounds to me like you're saying then by creating all of these different opportunities, taking a Genius Hour, and we just talked to Don Wettrick about innovation. Don's a great innovation guy, and we just had him on. And there's a lot of this sparking excitement even in this standardized world by doing all of these creative, innovative, project-based activities. I know that people are listening to this, and people who listen to our podcast, they love the idea that we have known experts and authors and people who have really done it, because that's what hack learning is. We say we've got the people who they're not just saying it, they're not just basing it on some philosophical approach, they're in the trenches doing it, like you are. So they're saying, this sounds great. But we're talking about de-standardizing, and we're still talking about doing cool things. We like to send our audience away with something they can do right now. So if I'm listening to Don Casey-Rowe talking about de-standardizing while doing all these really cool things, I'm thinking, man, that's neat. I'm going back into the classroom soon. What can I do right away to de-standardize my class and to do a lot of the cool things you're saying? Because it sounds hard to me. What could I do tomorrow to start on the path of all the cool innovation and de-standardizing my classroom?
So if I look at my customer base, my students, and I say, you know what? That's the YouTube kid. That's the writer. That's the musician. That's, I know what their talents are after some time. I might actually give a topic and break it down into 5 subtopics and then let them present. So the standard jigsaw, but I also will sometimes present my idea for a project and not have it cast in stone. Hey, tomorrow I'd like to do this. I keep in mind, I'm a social studies teacher. No one wants to take my class. I'm teaching about dead guys. That's what I do. And I've got to make you jump on board for that. So I might say, hey, tomorrow, Andrew Jackson, good guy, bad guy, you decide. And we'll teach just a little bit of little nuggets. And then I'll say, go, scavenger hunt, man. I want you to come up with 17 facts about Jackson. We're going to duke this out. And you will find that they'll come back with the material, because they'll be prepared, because I didn't make it homework. I said, hey, we're going to do this tomorrow. Best team wins. And I don't even know what they win. Sometimes they win a cup of hot chocolate that I happen to have over at the Keurig. Sometimes they win world domination. I'll make up a little, icon for them, whatever. But it's the fact that I publicly declared them the winner. I've set them off on a task, and I've set them off on a task to do better than me. Man, my lesson stinks. You come in tomorrow with a better idea, we'll do your thing.
Yeah, so I'm hearing to do tomorrow. So a few different instructions that could really make this happen for teachers who are maybe unclear about how to do de-standardization. So I'm hearing take your large task and maybe break it down. So if I'm going into class tomorrow and I've got a large task, I'm thinking, what can I break this down into? What segments can I present, or even one segment that my kids can grab onto right away? I'm hearing give the kids some choice. Throw something at them, and instead of doing detailed instructions, say, let's go learn this, and what path will you go down to do that? And I'm hearing then attach something to them that incentivizes. I don't love the word reward, but I'm hearing, you can win world domination. What kid wouldn't want that, right? So these are some what you can do tomorrows, right?
And I've even Snapchatted out the winner. I actually never intended to use Snapchat for my classroom, but I was researching it for something else. And I'm old, so I'm not supposed to be on Snapchat. And my kids are like, Miss, you got a Snapchat? I said, well, doesn't everybody? Duh, come on. Yeah. So for me, by recognizing their expertise and validating that within the structure of my own expertise, I might know all this boring stuff, but you've got, you've got the goods. And I give them real full professional onus for bringing that to the table. And I respect that. I'm letting you dig into your opportunity. And now we've got to apply that to how you're going to make some cash.
I love that. Let them dig in.
They're the experts.
Yeah,
and if a lot of times we put down their stuff. We put down their Snapchat.
Right.
We had that conversation on Facebook that day.
Yeah.
We put down YouTube. This is a time waster. We block all the things that they love and we banish it instead of saying, hey, how can you use that in my class to be an expert?
Yeah.
So I give them that space.
Yeah, that's great. I love the stuff about Snapchat too. And we did have a rich conversation about that on Facebook. I think we're gonna do more with Snapchat on Hack Learning, because it's where kids are. And I'm also hearing from you, sort of let them dig in, but let them dig in where they are as well. Give up control. That's fantastic. So, Dawn, we could continue this conversation for so long. I could talk to you for hours, and I think people would want to listen. But maybe we'll circle back in the future. But in the meantime, tell our listeners where they can find you, what to look forward to, any contact information. Of course, we'll put it on our show notes page at hacklearningpodcast.com, but go ahead and tell the listeners right now where they can reach out to you to continue a conversation about de-standardization.
So I'm at Twitter at RunningDMC. I'm on the Cafe Casey blog, and you can comment there, and I'll get that email as well. I'm all over social media. Wherever people meet up, I'll try and be. So it's an honor to get to have these conversations with people who care to make those changes.
All right, that sounds great. Dawn Casey-Rowe, author of Don't Sniff the Glue. Check that out on Amazon, linked on our show notes page as well. And, of course, hopefully in the future we'll talk a little bit about financial literacy, because that sounds like it's coming. There's so much to talk about with Dawn Casey-Rowe. Dawn, thanks for joining us. As always, we continue the conversation at #HackLearning on Twitter and on the show notes page at hacklearningpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.